again.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We will see Linda in a moment. Welcome to the December 11, 2024 Form-Based Code Area Working Group meeting. For the record, I am Daniel Weir, and I am chairing tonight's meeting. We are holding a virtual public meeting today, and all participants with us are joining remotely. And to orient everyone to the virtual environment and cover a few steps about how today's meeting will run, I've got a few bullets. First, tonight's meeting is available to join from the Form-Based Code Area Working Group webpage from the county's events calendar and at the top of today's agenda. Additionally, there's a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. I expect that we will be joined by at least one participant tonight over phone. If anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your video turned off and microphone muted until you're called upon. And please turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. These tools are located as icons on your toolbar. If you do not see this toolbar, try tapping or clicking on your screen to make it pop up. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that's located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. If you are dialing in by phone, please press *6 to unmute. When you're finished speaking, please press *6 to remute your microphone. The meeting chat's active for participants who need technical assistance, and the meeting chat should not be used for discussion, for public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more substantive information. All public comment must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony periods. Some additional notes for area working group members. If members wish to be recognized to speak on an item, please turn on your video feed and leave your microphone muted. Please also use the raise hand feature. That lets me know who is first in line. I'll use the video feeds and the raised hand feature as an indicator of who'd like to speak. Primarily, I will use the raise hand feature. Once you've been recognized, you may unmute. Once you've completed speaking, please turn your video feed back off. I know we have at least one member joining us by phone. I will give a moment to hear whether or not anyone else is with us. Linda, as is traditional, I will try to keep an eye out for your phone going off mute in lieu of raising your hand. But if I also ask that please feel welcome to speak up if you feel like I have not noticed that. And then if there are any public speakers with us, I am not on the screen with the names right now. You'll be called upon to speak at the end of the meeting, and you'll be muted when time is concluded. And lastly, a reminder that this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website, and all information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. With that said, Ms. Sontag, I'll turn it back to you to introduce our first item.
Thank you, Commissioner Weir. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see this. So I'll give just a brief overview of the proposal and the form-based code compliance. And then the applicant has a presentation prepared with more of the fun visuals for the proposed development project. I also have with me tonight Mr. Gibson from our Department of Environmental Services Division and Melissa Danowski with the Housing Division. So we'll all be available for questions at the end. So this is the first new construction project at Barcroft. It's located at 4320 Columbia Pike, and it's within the neighborhood's form-based code district. Before we jump into some of the site context and the elements of the proposal, I do want to bring us back to the schedule for some of the various actions that we're preparing to bring to the board in February. The reason being is that this development proposal does rely upon some amendments to the form-based code. So in a few slides, I'll show you specifically what those changes are. But just to bring us back to the process that we've gone through, this development application was submitted in September. The AWG has reviewed the proposed zoning ordinance amendments that help to implement the vision established by the Barcroft MFDP and by the updates to the policy documents that all took place in the first half of 2024. So you all had an opportunity with the expanded working group to review those proposed amendments in October and November. Last night, we brought those amendments to the zoning committee of the Planning Commission. And then we anticipate taking those amendments to the board for a request to advertise in January, and then hopefully for final adoption in February. So tracking alongside those amendments are two other items. The first is the one we're reviewing tonight. It's the first new construction project. So that item will also be heard concurrently with the amendments in February. And then the third item are adopting amendments to the GLUP and the MTP, which we did advertise and review with you all back in July of 2024. So just as a reminder, these proposed amendments, they generally update three different kind of categories in the neighborhood's form-based code. The first piece of this is regulatory text to support some of the necessary changes. The second piece are new cross sections that are specific to Barcroft and updates to the street type maps. And then the third piece are updates to the regulating plan maps. So what you'll see tonight is that this proposal does rely on some of the updates to the street cross-section diagrams and updates to the regulating plan maps. So to start with some site context, this is the Barcroft Apartments property. Hopefully you can see my cursor on the screen. In this location, right here is Columbia Pike. And the subject site is located in this red area here. It's adjacent to a property that was not within the Barcroft boundaries. There are condominiums that were developed several years ago. And then it's also bounded by South Taylor Street to the east. The GLUP designation is low, medium residential, and it's within the neighborhood's area plan. So this is the central subarea regulating plan. And again, this regulating plan shows a snapshot of the proposed amendments that will be going to the board. So the site is located here. I've just circled it so we can still see the locations of the required building lines and the parking setback lines. But it is occupied by the urban mixed use BES designation on both Columbia Pike and on Taylor Street. And it's adjacent to conservation areas. So it doesn't have any specific architectural standards that apply to this site. We won't see those apply until we get into these any of these blue areas in subsequent applications. So the second piece that we'll show you is these are the two of the proposed cross sections that the board will also consider in February. Along Columbia Pike, you can see the Barcroft frontage on this side, and we're showing a shared parking and tree zone of 7.5 feet, a 10-foot clear sidewalk, and a 5.5-foot building zone. And then on South Taylor Street, we'll see a 4-foot building zone or dooryard, a 6-foot sidewalk, and then again a shared parking and street tree zone. The other piece that we're tracking through the review of this permit are some of the commitments that were made in the Master Financing and Development Plan, which was approved by the board in July 2024. So there are 5 different elements primarily that we're beginning to track. We will be developing a tracking mechanism or some kind of a tool to keep a kind of tally of all of these items across the site. Because some areas of the site will rely on other areas of the site to meet some of these site-wide requirements. But the first are tree canopy targets. This proposal is delivering about 14% tree canopy as proposed. Accessible units, they have committed to 10% accessible units within this proposed development. So this exceeds the minimum 2% required by the building code. We'll also be tracking all of the biophilic pedestrian pathways throughout the site. This site does not have any of those adjacent to it, so it's not applicable. Site-wide parking, this site is proposing all of its parking contained within the building with the reduction allowed by providing affordable housing. And then the fifth piece is tracking the affordable housing provided. And you'll see in just a second, this proposal includes 110 units. All will be committed affordable units within a 6-story building. The existing building there today has about 13 units that'll be demolished. And then in a below-grade parking garage, we'll see 89 parking spaces, and then 2 newly created parking spaces on Columbia Pike. We'll also have 48 bicycle parking spaces, 15% private open contiguous lot area. They're proposing Earthcraft Gold. So this is the first new construction project to implement the updated green building standards, which is very exciting. They also are providing additional baseline prerequisites, which happy to answer more questions on those if there are any. And then there are 3 different requested modifications as part of this proposal. The first, as you can see on this image, there is some topography change along the South Taylor Street, if you can see my cursor here. So they do need a modification for the height of the first floor relative to the fronting sidewalk elevation. And in the applicant's presentation, they may be able to point out exactly where that is on the elevation plans. The second item is for some of the street tree spacing due to the location of some of the on-street parking spaces. And then the third is adjacent accommodations for adjacent existing buildings to remain, which are not within this phase, but once those phases are developed, we'll deliver the full street cross sections, for example, on South Taylor Street. So we are here this evening with you, the Form-Based Code Advisor Working Group. Our next steps for this proposal are to resolve any outstanding issues. The applicant will then prepare their final submission and schedule the community meeting. Because of the modifications, this is a use permit review, so it will be reviewed by the Planning Commission and County Board. And then finally, just a brief snapshot of the review process. The application was submitted in September. The second preliminary submission was submitted in December. The community meeting is anticipated sometime in early January. And again, planning to visit the Planning Commission and County Board in February. And that concludes my piece of the presentation, and I'll invite the applicant to bring up theirs.
Thanks, Ms. Sontag. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Riley with Walsh Colucci, and we represent the applicant, Gyra Lynch Real Estate Partners, for this application. And from our team tonight, we have Kalina Lee with Gyra Lynch. She's a project manager on their side. Chris Gordon and Henry Mons with KGD Architecture have joined us as well. And Chris will be going over the elevations and renderings in just a moment, and all the architecture on the site. And then we've got several folks here from VICA, which serve as our civil engineers, our traffic engineers, as well as landscape architects. So I think I see Jeff Krebs, Mike Pinkoski, Thomas Hazard, Nick Richardson on the call. And our whole team will be available for questions after our presentation. So I'll jump in here. Ms. Sontag covered a lot of the background here on this site, but just to orient you all, the way our plans are oriented for this presentation, Columbia Pike is on the left, so north is to your left here, and then our site is outlined in red. As noted, we are adjacent to Columbia Pike, South Taylor Street, an existing driveway that ends right here where a future alley will be located, and then these by right townhomes here, which are located within the neighborhood's form-based code, but were developed by right several years ago. And you'll see because of this, development, these townhomes have set the grade quite high on Columbia Pike relative to our building. And so that's why you'll see some of the conditions that we have as we walk through. As Ms. Sontag noted, we're in the neighborhood's form-based code, and we're subject to the urban mixed-use BES, which permits multifamily buildings up to 6 stories in height, and really is promoting an urban development with buildings fronting the streetscape. This BES also requires 15% of the buildable area to be provided as open space, and other design recommendations as well. Looking at the site today, if you're on Columbia Pike, here in this bottom image, our building is right here where my cursor is, right behind these existing by right townhomes, and then across the street from the Centro development right here. And then as you kind of come around Columbia Pike, this driveway here is the area where future South Taylor Street will be located. And our proposed building here will really upgrade this streetscape, tie into what the county has already done through their multimodal improvements along Columbia Pike, and activate this area a bit more. Here's our proposed rendered site plan of the new development, which is in line with the recommendations of the Master Finance and Development Plan. As Ms. Sontag noted, we're proposing a 6-story residential building here with 110 units. All will be affordable, and they will average at 60% of area median income. And also what's notable here is that there's a majority of family-sized units in this development. 24% of the units are 1 bedrooms, 63% are 2 bedrooms, and 14% are 3-bedroom units. And 10% of the total units will also be accessible, which is consistent with Gyre Lynch's MFDP commitments for accessible units within new construction affordable buildings. Also, this is one of the first buildings, might be the first building in the neighborhood's code that is subject to those new sustainability requirements that the county board adopted earlier this year for the form-based codes. This building is proposed to be Earthcraft Gold and will meet all of those certification requirements. Additionally, as we get to the ground plane of the site along Columbia Pike, you can see here where we've got our on-street spaces and street trees. We'll be constructing this portion of South Taylor Street in a new private alley to serve the building. Vehicular access will be along the private alley with loading dock here, and then the parking garage entrance here. Your main pedestrian access to this building will be at the corner of Columbia Pike and South Taylor Street. This is where the lobby is, and so this is the main pedestrian entrance, although we have a few entrances along South Taylor Street and Columbia Pike as well. And you'll see this a little bit more as we go through as Chris goes through the elevations in a little bit. In terms of parking, as Ms. Sontag said, we've got a below grade garage with 89 spaces and then 2 new on-street parking spaces here for pickup and drop off. Our open space on site, we're required to provide 3,700 square feet of open contiguous lot area, which is being provided here on this rooftop. And then in terms of the uses, the ground floor and upper floor uses on the site will have amenity spaces lining Columbia Pike and then units along the ground floor of South Taylor Street. And here on South Taylor Street, I'll also note that this bump in here is striped for fire access. So this is a requirement for the county's fire truck to be able to pull up here and service the building if needed. And so that is why our pickup and drop off parking spaces are located on Columbia Pike, which leads us to that modification request that Ms. Sontag mentioned for street tree spacing. We are, of the modifications, we do need one for the street tree spacing to space them farther apart than required in the code because of this pickup and drop off area here. This is the only place we're able to provide it for the building. And then we also are requesting that modification for the ground level finished floor elevation relative to the fronting sidewalk elevation. And that's in this area here where my cursor is. Chris can highlight that as he goes through the elevations. This is really due to the steep grade change from this corner here at Columbia Pike and Taylor down toward the private alley, the grade falls quite a lot. And the ground floor finished elevation needs to stay the same. And then lastly, as Ms. Sontag mentioned, a modification for the adjacent existing buildings to remain. They are outside of the application area, but we will need a subdivision of this larger parcel in order to develop this building, which will need this modification to ensure these can remain lawfully non-conforming until they are redeveloped. Then we'll walk you up the building. Won't spend too much time on these floor plans. We can come back to them as needed. This building has 3 levels of below grade garage. So starting off on the bottom level here is garage space with some mechanical electric equipment down here as well. Coming up the building, now we're on the 2nd floor of the garage, which starts to become level with this alley elevation here. So this is where loading will occur interior to the building. Trucks will come off South Taylor onto the alley and pull into this loading dock. Cars will access the garage here through this entry. We're providing a bike room here as well that's going to be at grade with South Taylor Street. So folks will be able to enter the bike room from South Taylor Street here or from the garage as well. And we are also providing a new crosswalk here to the sidewalk that's adjacent to us on that building to the south. As you move up the building, now more of the building is exposed at grade with South Taylor Street. We have units here lining the frontage along South Taylor Street. Then now we get to the level 1 floor plan where the building's at grade with Columbia Pike. Our amenities and building functions are located here along Columbia Pike to kind of activate this area, as well as that pickup and drop off and street trees. And the main pedestrian entrance will be here at this corner. So you'll be able to enter the site through these 2 doors here, right at the corner of Columbia Pike and South Taylor Street. The courtyard that you saw in the rendered site plan is here atop the parking garage. And this rectangle right here is where the transformers servicing the building will be located as well. Then here's a typical residential floor plan, floors 2 through 5, the corridor with units on either side. Again, I'll note how remarkable it is that there are so many 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units in this building to serve the families of the Barcroft neighborhood. Moving up to level 6, this building steps back here at the corner of the alley and South Taylor Street. And then here's the roof plan. I'm now going to hand it off to Chris Gordon with KGD Architecture. He's going to walk you through the design, the materials, some of those elevations as well, and then we'll be available for questions.
Hi, everybody. We'll start off with the front entrance. This is the main entrance at the corner of Taylor and Columbia Pike. The door and the area just outside of it is under a lot of cover. This is not only to make it more inviting to come to the front entrance of this with the canopy, but it's also to compensate for a lot of this grade. As you can see, even in this rendering, there's a tremendous amount of grade both on Columbia Pike and moving down Taylor Street. Well, the design is predominantly brick, and the response for this is to pick up on some of the themes for Barcroft itself. However, on the corner here, what we're doing is adding a lot more texture and color on the to highlight the corner of this with using a combination of brickwork and some contrasting brick in that side. You can see the materials at the top, 2 different types of brick, and then a cementitious paneling system at the top of the building. The cementitious paneling is to diminish some of the massing also, and it's to create and to sort of be sympathetic to the roof lines and the roof coloration of most of the Barcroft units, most of the Barcroft buildings themselves. Go to the next one. This is the opposite corner. Taylor Street is in the front here, and this is the corner of the alleyway, which is on the left-hand side, and then Taylor Street, which is moving up. There's one stoop that we have going into one of the units. You can see where the because of the grade and because of how it moves down towards the alleyway. We tucked units in above here. Should point out we have another lobby entrance here for convenience. So residents would be able to access this, and directly off of this lobby entrance is going to be the bike room itself. Moving down that alleyway, parking entrance and loading dock, trash and loading there. You can see the retaining wall in the backdrop. This is to also because of the severe topography, and the by right townhouses adjacent to it are at a much higher elevation than the rest of Barcroft. Even the historic area of Barcroft is much lower than that townhouse development there, and it's a very steep hill at this point with retaining walls. We're going to replace those retaining walls with a new one, which you can see there. You can also see in the fenestration and the material changes that we've got that we're stepping this down towards Barcroft proper. And then breaking down the massing through deep recessed areas of the building and contrasting brick colors. A lot of the existing buildings within Barcroft are painted white, and so we're picking up on that. We're also recreating, not replicating, but recreating some of the patterning in the windows and some of the brickwork that we have. So there's some great brickwork on some of the existing buildings, and we're using those elements as inspiration to create some of the details on the building itself. The materials on the top, or you can see on the top, it's a mixture of different types of bricks and some cementitious panels, different colored cementitious panels. Looking at the elevations, this is on looking back at it from Columbia Pike. You can see even the grade changes that we have there. There is a little bit of a stairwell coming out of the common areas for egress, which is depicted there in that little dip that you can see. You can see also, like Lauren's pointing out, over to the right-hand side where the townhouses are, we have an odd condition where we have a lot of topography to negotiate there. We're putting in a retaining wall to compensate for that in that area. And then on the far left-hand side, you can see the lobby entrance. Taylor Street elevation, this is the broadest face of the building. Again, you can see the terracing down for the materials and contrasting materials, a lot of texture on the brick as it moves down towards the lowest portion of the site on the left. The portion that we are asked to make a modification to is right where Lauren is pointing at, is right there, and you can see the reasons why. There's quite a significant grade change there. We actually notched the took-off area at the top floor to keep the building, and that's more of a building code issue, but we kept the building back, but it also works in favor of diminishing the mass as it moves towards the Barcroft, the existing Barcroft neighborhood. The alley view, parking, loading, or trash and loading in the darker portion, we've recessed that, tried to diminish it as much as possible. And then the garage entrance is on the far left-hand side. You can see the retaining wall on the left and the grade difference. We do have stairs that go up to the plaza area that start at the alleyway and move up, and that's for not only fire access but also for tenants in the building.
And then, Chris, residents will be able to access through elevators as well from interior to the building, right? They can access the courtyard that way as well.
Yes, they can. The building is completely accessible to the tenants. This is a view, various views moving around the building, starting in the upper left-hand corner. We already saw that front entrance along Columbia Pike. Moving to the right-hand view up top, if you move up Columbia Pike to the east, the townhouses are depicted in that lighter color there. That's the massing for that. And the highest portion, I should say, in the grade for the project exists in that portion there. Moving down to the one below that is the alleyway view we just saw in the previous perspectives. And then the last one is a courtyard view showing we're trying to use that as much as possible for biophilic reasons to have the tenants be able to enjoy a peaceful setting out in that courtyard area with significant trees.
All right, thanks, Chris. That concludes our presentation for tonight. As Ms. Sontag mentioned, we will have a follow-up community meeting that'll be open to you all and the general public. That'll probably be in the second or third week of January. We're still nailing down that date. And so I'll send that over to staff and they can distribute that information to you as well when when that time comes. And then generally, I did just want to note that we really have, Gyre Lynch and our whole team has appreciated the AWG's input over this past year. It's just reflecting on everything that we've done in 2024 is incredible. We appreciated all of your feedback and input throughout the MFDP process this summer, the zoning text changes and regulating plan changes that Ms. Sontag went over earlier from this winter. So we really have come a long way, and we are very excited to bring forward this first new construction project in Barcroft, and really excited to bring along affordable units and family-sized units with it. So with that, I'll hand it back to Chair Weir, and our team is available for questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Sontag and Ms. Riley and others who have presented. I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I don't see any raised hands right now. I might have a few, but I want to let others speak first. And so we'll start with Mr. Miltenberger.
Good evening. I don't know if my camera came on. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I do want to congratulate the architect on the plan. It looks great. That area of the Pike has seen some other development recently, and this seems like it's going to be a very positive contribution. The number of 3-bedroom units sounds very positive to me. Also, the fact that you are putting in 10% of the units are going to be affordable is excellent. I do have just a couple questions. You had mentioned in the facades that some of them are going to be white to mimic some of the white brick that's in Barcroft. I was just curious, is that bricks that are painted white, or are they white bricks?
It's white brick, yeah.
Oh,
and it won't be a stark white. It's going to have white with some slight variation between the bricks, so that it has. We don't want it to have an institutional look about it, so we'll introduce some. You can see it's not going to be as contrasting as you can see on Centro, but it's going to be predominantly white with variations in it.
okay,
Brick,
excellent.
that is.
Okay, and Chris, I have a question. I didn't see the dimensions for the width on the alley, but I was just a little concerned that the entrance to the parking is way back in that corner.
Yeah.
And I'm presuming it has to do with some very serious considerations in the construction of the building. But I'm just asking the question, if a moving van, or let's say there are service vehicles that are at the loading dock, can the residents reasonably be expected to drive past that truck or moving van or whatever to get into the parking garage? I'm raising the question. I'm sure you did this for a very specific reason, that the entrance is back there, but maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah.
And one other quick question, and then I'll give you the floor, please. Just with the open continuous lot area, I'm pleased to see that. It looks very nice. Just one observation from the diagrams, it looks like it's more concrete than greenery. Now, that might just be how I'm looking at the diagram, but I'm just wondering if we can have more, I'll say grass, but more space on the ground that is for children to walk on and play and possibly, toss a ball or something. I'm just putting that out as an observation. But those are my questions.
Thanks. I can take the first one about the courtyard, Mr. Miltenberger. We are balancing a number of things there. Like Chris said, biophilia, we are trying to provide some greenery so residents have access to air, light, and plant materials, but also provide some usable programming space for them, like grills, kitchens, lounge space. And so the landscape plan we've come up with, we think balances that. And I'll share real quickly so you can see our landscape plan, which I think will give you a better idea about how green this space actually will be. I think this is a little.
It also functions as stormwater retention too.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I figured there was a good reason, but.
Yeah, and then I see on the alley width question, I see Nick Richardson and Jeff Krebs are on. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have 26 feet wide in that alleyway, which is adequate space for cars and parcel trucks and moving vans to turn into the garage.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
And one of the reasons why the entrances to the parking garage is not where the loading, trash and loading is for that exact reason. The trucks are supposed to be off that alleyway and inside the building to unload. And in order to do that safely, we needed to have the trucks go by the dock first and then reverse and back into the loading dock area.
Thank you for explaining that. It's very helpful.
All right, we're going to go to Ms. McWilliam.
We can't hear you, Amy.
Amy, you're on mute. You're off mute, but now you're back on mute, Amy. Amy, it's possible that you have a different audio input device set on Teams. You're on mute right now. I'm going to go to Catherine, and then we'll come back to you, Amy.
Hi, this is Kathy Guernsey at Columbia Forest. I wondered, would it be possible to return to, I believe it's level 1 plan, which I think, I'm not sure what page that is. Was it page 9 on the presentation? I just had a question about some access doors, and I'm not sure if I'm just not reading it properly or if it's just a relatively, there we go. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That one. Yep, that's the one. So I was curious. Oh, thanks for enlarging it. That's great. On that, I'll just say bottom left corner, you've got a fitness room and a community room there. Yep. And I wasn't sure if I was reading this properly, or maybe not every door is represented on this plan, and that's fine. But as I saw the fitness room and the community room, initially it looks as though the only doors to those spaces are
I see
into
what you
external
mean.
places. I'm sure that's not right. Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, I think that's just how.
Yeah, the doors are just not. We're not at the stage where we're representing the doors yet, but they will have to be doors.
Yeah, this is more of a preliminary guess at how the amenity space will lay out. You know, what we're intending to represent in the use permit is that this area will be residential amenity space. And here we're trying to give you a bit of a preview of how we think we'll lay that out. Of course, the doors, you know, when it gets to building permit stage, we'll be showing the doors that are opening to the corridor. You won't have to go into the courtyard to get into the community room.
Yeah, I assume that was the case. I just wanted to make sure. I'm not always great at reading the plans. But the second question I had is, if you're entering from the corner of Columbia Pike and South Taylor Street, you've got that very nice big canopy there, which is great to provide people with shelter if it's raining. I'm assuming those doors, they're external doors, and so they would have accessibility buttons for wheelchair users and things. So you would come into that main lobby. Am I correct in thinking because of the way the grading works, you would need to go, there's a little lift, an elevator off of that main lobby. Would that then take you up to that corridor that would then
Yes,
get
it
you
would.
to the community room and the fitness room? Okay.
Yes, correct.
I saw the stairs there, and I wanted to make sure that that I was reading that right. Okay. And I guess the other question I had was, I really appreciate the effort that's being put into making sure that there are plenty of accessible units, and didn't know if there was anything on these plans that would particularly call out those units that were intended, say, for somebody who's a wheelchair user or had a mobility disability, if there are specific units that had already been identified that would be maybe prioritized for those users. If not, that's fine, just curious.
Yeah,
They will
we're not
be.
quite at that level
Yeah,
where
but
we're
they will be identified for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're going to be identified and marked for that. And I can't speak for the owner. Maybe Kalina would know this, but those units are kind of held for accessible needs, except for if they don't fill with somebody with accessibility, they'll rent those out to anybody else that would need it.
That's correct, Chris. Thank you for the question, Catherine. As much as possible, we try to reserve those homes during lease up where possible until we're fully leased up. And then if we run out of homes and no one has required those needs, then they go to the first come, first serve. There.
Great. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry, one very last thing, the courtyard furniture, again, this is way too early given where you are in the plans, but I really love the idea of the courtyard, giving people a quieter space to be outside, to enjoy a little bit of nature in there. Just making a plug, I see some sort of indicative markings that would be, I guess, for some seating and some picnic tables and things. Just to give a plug to ensure that there are some options there that would, say, facilitate a wheelchair user being able to access that table to sit with other people for a picnic and things. Again, that's further down the road, but just making a plug for that. But thank you very much.
I think I can elaborate, but like the entire building would be reviewed by accessibility consultant for both FF&E, but also building construction. So it will all be thoroughly reviewed. So thank you for that point, but it will be reviewed.
And we're following universal design as well.
Great to hear. Yeah, love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy, we will try to go back to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just not going to put the camera on because I think that's messing with everything else. But the question I had, and it might just be my interpretation of the picture, but that the retaining wall that needs to be what it needs to be because of the adjacent property, it wasn't clear to me whether that would impede any residential units in terms of the view out their window. Is anybody going to be looking at that retaining wall?
Not directly, no. Units that are within the units that are on that western facade will be looking at just the top of it. And units that are in that courtyard area will have views back towards a portion of a retaining wall. On the lower level where the alleyway is, those units face 90 degrees from that. They're not the retaining wall would have a partial view probably with the units that are closest to it, directly, but none of the other units would face it.
And they'll have views through the courtyard as well. They won't be just retaining wall for those units on facing the west side. They face the courtyard, and then the upper levels will not really see that retaining wall.
Right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Daniel
Linda,
it's
we'll go
Linda
to you.
Dye.
Yep.
Yep,
And then
okay,
Linda,
thanks.
and then Mark.
Yeah, you just answered Amy's question about will a couple of those apartments be looking at the wall? So it's good to hear that they're not just going to have a view of a blank wall. They'll be at the top. I couldn't find any direct measurement. What is the actual width between your building wall and the new retaining wall that will be building. It looks really narrow. And you said that there's going to be steps along that narrow passageway, but what is the distance between your wall and the new retaining wall that will be built?
Henry may be able to answer, but I think it's about 13 feet, 12 to 13 feet.
Okay, I was afraid it was down to like 6 or 7, so 12, 13 feet. That's
yeah.
better. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And that's
great.
That's a common fire separation distance, but also it provides for adequate air and light.
Right. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks. And also, I just wanted to compliment everybody on having such a high mix of 2 and 3 bedroom. We really, really appreciate that in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Mark, we'll go to you, and then back
Thank
to
you.
Amy.
Yep. So to beat this wall another time, the community room, are they going to be looking at the wall?
No, the community room, there won't be any windows on that, or at least I don't think there's going to be any windows on that side of it. The predominant view should be from the community room is towards the courtyard space. Yeah. And we'd like to engage, be able to have that functional space and relationship so people could go out into that courtyard area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark, the community room will open out to the courtyard area.
I saw that.
Yeah, and then this is the transformers here, so it wouldn't have any openings toward the west side. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, so that's going to be pretty enclosed room. So, okay. If I recall correctly, you said on the back corner, the alley in South Taylor, on the 6th floor, that back corner was going to be set down. There wasn't going to be something on the 6th. The top floor is going to be carved out.
Yep, right there. Yep.
And is there a reason for that?
Actually, there is, but there's several reasons. But one is it does diminish the mass. You can see it in this perspective on that corner. But it's also we're following the Virginia International Building Code, and the last occupiable level has to stay below 75 feet. And because of the topography and because of the height at that corner, because of the, it's the lowest point on the site, we can't have units up there unless we go to a higher building classification.
Yeah. Okay.
But Mark, I appreciate you trying to give me density. So thank you. Okay, not for me, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, we all want to provide as many units as we can.
Well, that's kind of why I was thinking. It's like, why would they not? That doesn't
Trust me, I asked that question also. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
No.
Usually it's some weird form-based code thing, but now it's some weird building code thing that we've got to deal with.
Yeah, and then not a question to the structure, and I will just repeat. I was really thrilled to hear that the number of unit sizes in the building, 2 and 3 bedrooms. That's fantastic. But so where that's going to be replacing. We're demoing some buildings that are currently there, correct?
That's right. We'll be demolishing. There's one building that's there right now, and let me double check. It has 13 units and surface parking associated with it. So we'll be demolishing that and constructing this 6-story building with 110 units as envisioned by the form-based code and the regulating plan.
Got it. That's a fair trade. So those 13 units, those families, if they choose to, will be relocated somewhere in Barcroft.
Right. So the commitment that Jara Lynch has made with the county, and Melissa can jump in if I'm misspeaking, but they are adhering to tenant relocation policies plus. So the folks who live in this building in Barcroft will have an opportunity to relocate elsewhere in Barcroft, and then might have a possibility to locate back in this building once it's constructed.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Amy, we'll go back to you.
I'm sorry, my hand is not raised. I'm having technical issues. I just emailed you and Olivia. My apologies. I can't get it to go away.
No worries. I think we can. Ed, we'll go back to you.
I just wanted to comment to Lauren, thank you for your use of the mouse. It was much easier to follow the presentation with a larger cursor on the screen.
This is all for you, Ed. As I was getting ready, I was like, I'm going to be pointing a lot. How do I do this? And Google helped me out.
It
Lauren, you'll
really
have to show
is.
me how to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was much easier to follow what you were saying.
You know, I'm glad we were able to figure that out, because you can look at the laser pointer, just like a technical aside. If you're presenting through PowerPoint via Teams, it's the only way to get the laser pointer. But then you have to go actually change your settings for the mouse. But after doing enough of these this year, we finally figured it out.
It was much easier. Thank you much.
Of course.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other hands. I don't see anyone on mute. The questions that I mentioned that I had to do about the retaining wall. Oh, I do have one question. With apologies if I missed this. The sidewalk along Columbia Pike has just been rebuilt. Is the proposed clear width the same as the existing condition? Is it wider? Does it alter it at all? And the real question that I have, I mean, this is a real question, but the eventual boogeyman that I'm keep thinking about is that retaining wall a couple blocks further west, and what will happen to that when that building gets developed. But you know, that's also tomorrow's problem. So I see Rob, I saw Lauren back on. I'll yield back the floor.
Daniel, thank you for bringing that up. I was just looking at our cameras in the area, and the sidewalks look amazing. I hope everybody is enjoying using them now that they're open. We're working with the applicant to double check everything with sort of those evolving conditions. The face of building to face of curb is more than is out there today in any circumstance. But we're going to be looking at some of the details on how to make sure everything lines up correctly within that breakout between tree planting areas, parking, then the sidewalk, and then the building zone. So I think that there will be some evolution of the plans between now and approval in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's great anyway.
The sidewalks will not get smaller.
No other questions. At one point I was hearing someone else, or I might have been hearing things, but I think we may be wrapping up relatively early this evening then. If there are no other questions, then Olivia, I'll go back to you.
Thank you. And then are we saving public comment? I don't know if there are any public comment. I haven't
One
seen
second,
anything
Lauren.
in the chat.
Oh, thank you, Olivia. Yes, I haven't seen anything in the chat, and I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing anyone speak up. But going once, going twice on public comment. All right, thank you, Olivia.
No problem. So with that, I think the first item is wrapped up, and we just have a few additional information items to share with you as we prepare for some of the upcoming work in 2025. So I'll share my screen.
And we'll hop off. Thanks again,
yeah, thank you, everybody.
Appreciate your time. Have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye. More to
Good night.
come.
Yes, we have a lot more work on Barcroft up ahead of us. So I think at the beginning I summarized some of the next steps for the form-based code zoning ordinance amendments that are going forward to the board in February. Please feel free to ask questions here or after the meeting if you have any about those. And then another item that will be going to the board in February are some technical amendments to the form-based codes. These are primarily some clarifications and largely corrections of section references throughout the primarily the neighborhoods form-based code. I think when the code was reformatted several years ago, not all of those section correction or section references were updated throughout the code. So this is really just a very technical cleanup item, but does need to be approved by the board. So you will see that on their agenda for a request to advertise in January, and then seeking approval by the board in February. And then did just want to update you all that the two form-based code projects that you all reviewed this past year for the 2801 Columbia Pike Frame Shop and the 2300 Ninth Street Townhomes were approved by the county board in November. So I will keep you up to date as we receive any progress updates on those. And then the last item for update is just an overall status of the Barcroft renovations. I will be sharing with you shortly a forecast for some of the AWG meetings to anticipate in 2025. I can confidently say already that we will not be meeting during January and February. So you have a couple months off before we dive back into more Barcroft work. But this image on the side just again gives you a summary of some of the work that we've reviewed and some of the work that's upcoming. We've reviewed 4 renovation use permits, and then in April and May of 2025, we anticipate taking the final 3 renovation use permits, 5, 6, and 7, to the county board. So we will likely meet to review these 3 applications in March and in April. So those will be the next form-based code meetings to anticipate. As we hear about any other development projects coming down the pipeline, we'll certainly keep you posted on anticipated AWG dates for those as well. I know there's usually questions about some of the other form-based code projects that have been recently approved, such as the Bank of America site. We also still have the Pike West site over of Greenbrier Street, and don't have any status updates as of this time. Those projects are just, I think, in limbo for the moment. And then we haven't heard any updates on the status of the Fillmore Gardens Shopping Center and whether or not that may come back in for another use permit. But as soon as we hear anything, I'm happy to share more information. So I think that wraps up this piece of it, but happy to answer any questions on any of these items.
Daniel, it's Linda Dye.
Thanks, Linda. Be our guest.
Yeah, just as usual, we have a lot of questions about what's going on with the Exxon redevelopment. So it sounds like they're still trying to figure out how to have a viable application. Is it still just no status on their request to have a light at South 11th, what would be a new South 11th Street? Is there anything new on the Exxon project basically at this point? That's the thing that our community has the greatest interest in.
No, we haven't had any updates in almost a year now from the applicant since comments were shared with them. So as soon as they come back with any kind of update to their proposal or want to re-engage with some of those conversations, I'm happy to send you all an update. But for now, it's been some radio silence.
Okay, and that including, there's nothing about VDOT and possibly adding a light at South 11th Street. So basically everything's just on hold in terms of whether that would be considered or proposed or denied. So there's no change in that. That's how what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Linda.
Okay, I don't see any other, thank you, Linda. I don't see any other hands. So Ms. Sontag, if you have no other business, and if no one else has any other questions, I am going to declare this meeting adjourned, and we will talk to you all next time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.